the swing and swalter. Swing and swalter. Steve, tell me what you had for breakfast this morning.
I had some leftover pasta from last night.
Nice.
With a homemade Alfredo sauce and 2 eggs and 2 meatballs as well, Italian style.
Dude, that sounds really good for breakfast.
Yeah, just kind of put it in a big frying pan, mix it all up, and
okay.
My wife calls it a pan melt.
Pan melt?
I just throw in a bunch of shit with cheese and I let it melt and get all gooey and good, and yeah.
Perfect. And it's funny because when you think about that, right, it's all going in the same place.
Yeah.
And even on the plate, like, it's nice to have everything like segmented, but like you're eventually going to, I don't know, at least I do. I put it all together and it's
got
going
a little
on
bit of
forkful.
each in each bite, yeah.
So why not just manpandle it? Manpandle? Is that what
Man-pan melt.
Man-pan melt it. Done. All right, those levels look pretty nice. That's my level checkers. I ask people for breakfast, and then I also secretly record that. So that's usually the intro. Nice. Hey, Steve, how's it going? See, this is how you podcast. Now we're recording, and you might just see me kind of riding the levels. I think that's what they say, riding the levels.
Riding the levels.
Yeah, every now and then, if you want to do a radio voice, you can do a radio voice. just lower, just get that dB down there.
This is NPR.
Yeah. Swalter Swang Show. Okay. So, hey guys, how's it going? Steve Walter Podcast, Steve Walter Photo Podcast, Season 2, Talkin Topics. And today I have with me Steve Wang. Hey, Steve.
Hello. How we doing?
Good. A couple of Steves. And I asked Steve, like, super last minute. I wanted to record today, and I was like, who do I know that's in the area? And I was like, oh, Steve, maybe. Texting him, I'm like, yo, dude, do you want to come record? And he's like, yeah, when? I'm like, now, maybe? He's like, okay, yeah, cool, I got some time, let's do it. So thank you so much for coming by.
Yeah, of course.
It's one of those things where today's topic is headshots. And really just in general headshots, there's a couple of talking points that I have in my head. I don't really do too much prep for the podcast. Yeah. I should have like notes or something like that. I have mental notes.
Notes are for suckers.
And we kind of they are. Unless you want structure and consistency and reliability.
And you're good at studying and want to ace the test.
Right, all those things. Yeah. But we're creatives. I don't really work well with that stuff. Improv, let me do that. So we kind of talked a little bit beforehand about some of the things, right? And we seem to be pretty well aligned, at least with those immediate conversations. But what you're actually doing later today is what, Steve?
Doing a couple headshots.
Doing some headshots.
Yeah. Actually, just one headshot and then a couple kids' school pictures, but they're headshot-esque.
Okay, yeah, headshot-esque, right.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a formal portrait, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So I guess let's do that. Let's define a headshot, if we can. I don't even know if there is a definition for a headshot. But what I mean specifically is, to me, a headshot is different than a portrait. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, well, I think headshot is kind of like a subset of portraits.
Yes,
yeah.
Right. A headshot is a type of portrait.
Right.
I think even in the way that I have my files organized on my computer is that I have a portraits folder, and then inside of that portraits folder, there is headshots.
Yeah.
And then inside of the headshots, there's different types of headshots. We'll get into that. But, right, what is a headshot, and what are we talking about? I'm not just talking about a snapshot. I'm talking about something that is a slightly more formal representation of yourself. Is that a good definition?
Yeah, I think so.
Or
I
adequate?
think I think, you could define a headshot as a couple different ways. That being one of them. You could also, like, whether it's like an environmental portrait or just like the standard, plain backdrop, like head and shoulders style headshot.
And I think that's more of what I'm thinking of, because when I think environmental portrait, I think that's something different.
Okay.
I wouldn't call that I wouldn't define that as a headshot.
Yeah.
Meaning, if I reached out, or if a client reached out to me and said, hey, I want a headshot, in my mind, I have a pretty clear picture of what that's going to be. At its very basic, right, you've got a clean background with nice lighting, and you're smiling at the camera.
Yeah.
Right? Like, that to me is just, boom, headshot, done.
Yeah.
Obviously, there's more involved in it than that, but at its simplest, versus something like an environmental portrait is, hey, maybe they're, it's a little bit wider, and they're maybe sitting on the corner of their desk, their arm is resting on their knee, and they're like, hey, guy, this is me, and I'm a cool guy. Like, here's my office.
Yeah.
We got nice window light coming in, and I'm smiling at you because I'm having a good time. Buy my services. Like, that to me is, you're kind of there's more of a story. Mm-hmm. That has a story. A headshot has no story. Well, it does. It's the person.
Yeah.
It's like an autobiography, I guess, if it's a story.
I suppose. Yeah.
So when I think headshot, that's what I think about. But that's an interesting point is when do you go into something like an environmental portrait?
Right. At what point does it become not a headshot and more of an environmental portrait?
Yeah.
Well, I think, I don't know. I get like clients who they call it a headshot, but what they really want is more of an environmental portrait, something not so just like head and shoulders black, plain back or white backdrop.
Yeah.
And, it's just something that they want to use on their website or their business card or, whatever. And I think they just say, headshot because that's what they're using it for maybe instead of what it actually is.
Right. And so even to that point, right, if I think about that as a headshot, if you're kind of showing a little bit more of a wider scene, I'm trying to almost connect it to more of a cinematic style where you have like a wide shot, a cowboy shot, an establishing shot, and a close-up. Like a close-up or a super close-up, right? Like a close-up is more akin to a headshot, I think.
Yeah.
Right? Or maybe it is even a cowboy shot, where it's basically, a little bit of room above your head and then just mid-bust. Like that to me is a headshot,
That's
right?
like your standard, typical headshot, yeah.
So when I think of that, if, for example, I deliver to a client an environmental portrait where maybe it's a little bit more wide angle, and they use that as a tiny little thumbnail on their profile on LinkedIn, well, now I can't really see them, right? So there's almost like not even say a strategy to it. Obviously, you'd like to think that they would be able to crop in on that environmental portrait and think, oh, let me crop in. But most don't do that. Yeah. Most will just, oh, here's the full-size picture. I'm just going to use it that way. Yeah. We have to deliver to them 1, 2, maybe 3 versions to say, here's the one you want to use for your LinkedIn profile because it's closer and it's tighter.
Here's the one you want to use with where the social media platforms automatically crop it as a circle.
Yes.
Which is a pain in the butt.
Yeah, I know. Although, who just recently switched? Facebook just recently switched from a square to a circle, right? Isn't that what they did? Wasn't that like a thing?
Yeah, I think it was a while ago though, wasn't it?
Maybe it was.
I don't know.
I saw something.
Can't keep track.
Anyway, you're right. So there's those differences. So when I think about that, right, an environmental portrait, the reason why I bring this up is when you talk about a headshot, I immediately ask, well, what are you using this for? And depending upon who you are and what you do, you and I as photographers, I don't know if I mentioned that Steve's a photographer. I think that's pretty clear though, because you said you're doing headshots. Yeah, Steve's a photographer. Where we were. So that is dependent upon who you are and what you do. Like if you're a lawyer or if you're a comedian, you're getting a very different headshot.
Yeah.
Right?
Like,
There's the psychology and the message between, what a comedian's headshot should look like and what a lawyer's headshot should look like. Right? So that to me is one of those things where as a lawyer, do I want to show you in your beautiful, like well-established law office?
Right, with all the books behind you and all that stuff. Yeah.
Isn't it so funny how like there's a picture that's immediately painted and everyone knows it and everyone expects it. But if you did something different than that, you might be like, what kind of lawyer is this guy? Like, this is weird. Like, where's all your books, dude? Where's all your diplomas and all your awards and your certificates? Versus a comedian where maybe you have them kind of, smiling and they're a little bit more goofy or a little bit happy-go-lucky. Animated, maybe more colorful, things like that. So there is that psychology. And I've talked about it before many times and probably on my podcast before, is that I like photography for the three main components. But the first 2 components of why I really like photography is there's the art and there's the science. Like it's similar to music. There's an art and a science to it. And my brain likes both of those parts. Like it really likes, I'm sure yours is as well,
Left brain, right brain working together.
Yes.
Yeah.
But then there's that third element specifically with portraiture, which is psychology, where now it's the addition of just telling a story, right? So there's the psychology of telling a story, but then there's also the psychology of understanding a person, connecting with a person,
which
showing
is
that person.
Kind of an art and a science in and of itself.
Oh, nice. Dude. You're right. It is right, because it's when someone comes in for a headshot, if they're coming into the studio, right, they're initially, the way I think about it, right, they're coming into my turf, quote unquote, right? So they're not in there. It's not like if we go to someone's office, right? They're going to feel a little bit more safe and secure, right, on a psychological level, if I go to them
Right.
versus if they come to me. So there's that, right? So I have to be aware of that. And if someone comes here, how do I make them feel comfortable? How do I get them disarmed, right? How do I have icebreakers for them? How do I have a conversation with them so that now, before I even take a picture, they can go, oh, you know what? I like this guy, Steve. Yeah, I'll take pictures with him.
Yeah.
They're not actually going to say that, but I need them to feel that way.
Right. You're not going to open up if you don't like the person that's taking your photo.
100%.
Yeah.
And imagine if someone just walked in the door and I was like, hey, come around right back here. We're going to take some pictures and I'll get you out of here. It's like, oh, whoa. No, you got to wine and dine me a little bit, right? I want to get to know you. So that's where the psychology comes in. But then it also comes in with the, how am I telling the story? How am I portraying this individual? Mm-hmm. And that was the other thing that I wanted to bring up, that as I'm driving around, right, it's almost election day, and I see all of these, what would you call it? Electoral billboards? Candidate,
political ad, candidate. Yeah, I don't know.
Candidate billboard. I don't know, those signs that you see in everyone's lawn. That's what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
You're driving around and you see, vote this person, re-elect this person, blah, blah, blah. And some of them are just graphics, but some of them have a headshot. Some of them spent a couple extra bucks and said, let's print CMYK on this plastic or this corrugate and put my face out there. Let people know who I am. And what I noticed was that there's two people in my town, at least. One of them clearly paid for a professional headshot, and one of them did not. So when I look at those images, I immediately say to myself, well, the person that didn't pay for it, he doesn't value a good headshot. He doesn't value what I do.
Right.
So this is me.
Personally.
Specifically, this is me, Steve Walter. He doesn't value what I do as a profession, so I can't trust him. How would I ever vote for that guy? This other person over here, well, they spent some money on a professional photographer. Really nice light. The color looks awesome. Great expression. I'd want to vote for them. Yeah. Even though that makes absolutely no sense.
Well, I don't think it doesn't make any sense. I think it's also, for us as photographers, we look at that stuff.
100%.
Versus any other, Joe Schmo on the street. They probably...
A carpenter, an electrician, a nanny, a teacher. They're not looking at any of that.
Right. Also, and I brought this up earlier, the person that spent the extra money on the headshot, are they more, shall we say, fiscally irresponsible or fiscally liberal versus someone who's trying to save a couple bucks by not spending the extra money on a headshot?
Right. And then here, I just thought of this. Well, what if the person who spent a couple extra bucks is helping support their community and they hired a local photographer? So now they're actually putting money back into,
yes,
right?
Supporting the local economy.
So there is that back and forth, right? And again, this is a ridiculous thought, but it's also not a ridiculous thought. And the reason I bring that up is because people have to make this decision, right? Whether you're a candidate for office or if you are a corporate CEO, or if you are, a mom and pop running a flower shop, like you have to say to yourself, do I need a headshot? Yes or no? And odds are the answer should be yes. It's 2018. If you're on social media, you should have something that represents you, your brand. If it is your face, great. Or if it's a logo, okay. But let's say it is your face. You need a headshot. Well, what type of headshot do you need? Again, if I were to say to you, and for those listening, right, a real estate headshot, there's an immediate picture that pops into your head, right? Like 100%, like, hey, you're a realtor? Cool, you need a headshot. And you do, because your face is going to be on that sign that's hanging outside that house.
On your business card and, everything else.
Everywhere. So that person, without a doubt, needs that. And then now it's, okay, well, what's my budget? What type of headshot do I want? Do I want something that's more environmental? Do I want something that's clean against the backdrop? Does any of that really matter? Or is it just that, hey, people need to see my face and they need to see me friendly? And it brings up that conversation of, or at least my idea of, everyone needs a headshot.
Yeah.
But what type of headshot do they need? Right. I guess I should say every professional needs a headshot. Not everyone. My 10-year-old nephew doesn't need a headshot.
Well, that's his school portraits. That's probably, I think that's a form of headshot.
You just flipped it again. Yes. You flipped it again. Swang's flipping it. You're right. Okay, I take it back. Everyone needs a headshot. And you want to know what? My 1-month-old daughter, she's got a headshot. I took pictures of her. She has a formal headshot. So it's headshots, man. They need to exist. They have to exist. But I guess the thought, again, going back to whether it be a real estate agent or this corporate CEO or whomever it is do I need to spend a lot of money or not? And let's talk about some of the technicalities, I guess, that go into a headshot.
Yeah,
right?
like lighting and whatnot.
Lighting, yes, and whatnot. Backgrounds, right? We have to think about that stuff.
Yeah.
And if I'm going to your location, right? If I'm going to where you are, that's what you're doing today, right? You're doing on location.
Well, yeah, I'm actually doing it at the district building. So it's funny you mentioned real estate agent earlier because the guy I'm taking a headshot for is a realtor.
Oh.
And he didn't want the, plain white background, just like Head and Shoulders. He wants a bit more of an environmental kind of office style portrait.
That's awesome.
So, yeah.
Right. And that space is absolutely, are you doing it in Drive?
Yeah.
It's absolutely beautiful there. So for those that aren't familiar, New Haven area, district building, awesome space. 7-something James Road. I forget the actual 786.
790?
796?
790, I think.
You can search for District New Haven. You'll find
come
it.
Up, yeah.
But inside of there is this co-working space called Drive, right? And it's absolutely beautiful. It's brand new. I mean, like
gorgeous space.
2 months old, 3
Yeah.
months old. It's brand new, and it would lend itself perfectly for an environmental portrait.
Which is why I chose that location, because he said his office is a mess, and my place isn't really suitable for office style portraits. So yeah.
And even that, right? So that's another thing, right? Do you rent a studio, or do you show up to wherever with a roll of, as we call it, seamless paper, right? Which is basically thick construction paper that's
on a roll.
On a 4-foot or 9-foot roll that is, a good 120 something feet long that we can just continuously roll out and cut as we need to. But there's that, or going to an environment. Now, when you go to an environment where now you have to kind of work with your surroundings, now we have to consider things like blending in available light.
Yeah.
And is that available light good? Is there this yellow overhanging, can light that just makes us look like raccoons? Or do we have nice, as we do at Drive, nice giant floor to ceiling windows that are just going to give us beautiful, soft, directional light? So there are those things to think about that most people wouldn't consider, but that's what we do. So going on location is very different than going into a studio.
Yeah, for sure.
And then going on location, right, at least what I've found sometimes is that depending upon how comfortable that person might be on camera, you're now working in an environment where you have other things that might distract or that might take away from what you're trying to do, right?
It's less of a controlled environment, and so there are other things that you have to think about.
I guess that's probably the best way to summarize
it.
Steve. That's perfect. You took my ramblings and you condensed it. You're like, is this what you're trying to say? But yeah, less control versus going into a studio and saying, cool, it's just me and you. Like, there's the 4 walls. This is it. Yeah. Let's just get some headshots.
And you can control every single little factor that goes into it.
Right.
Lighting, background, everything.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then even beyond that, right? So let's talk about going back to that psychology point, communicating with someone, because we were talking about it before, is that you can only get a good headshot from someone if they're comfortable with you, right? So it's establishing that rapport very quickly.
Yeah.
And I'm sure you've been in a scenario where maybe you only have a short amount of time with someone. And normally headshots, right, especially when you start going up the ladder in the chain of people that are, important, we'll call them.
Yeah.
If you're photographing a CEO or even just an owner of a business, they don't have an hour to give you out of their day.
Yeah, you got to.
You're lucky if you get 20 minutes, 30 minutes to photograph someone. So that means you need to, have all of your stuff dialed in, all the technical stuff. You just have to know it.
Yeah.
So again, that's what you're paying for. My overall reason for diving into this is, for those listening, do you need a headshot? Yes or no? What type of headshot do you need? And who are you hiring? If you're hiring someone who's going to charge you $25 for a headshot, you're going to get a $25 headshot.
Yeah, exactly.
If you hire someone that's going to give you a $400 headshot, you're going to get a $400 headshot. Notice how I changed those. I said $400 versus $25. So it's those things that we're not even going to have that conversation. We're just going to go in. You're going to know, nope, I'm going to put you over here. And I know I need to build that rapport. And I know I need to get the expressions. And I know I need to get the poses out of you to give you enough variety so that you can choose and find your best headshot.
Right. And
so it's,
I think, more people, in my experience anyway, more people they're concerned with their smile, their hair, their pose, more than any kind of technical lighting, background,
Absolutely.
anything like that.
Absolutely.
So yeah, you got to make them comfortable.
Absolutely. And I think that is, and there's tricks to that stuff, right? Or at least, so recently I photographed at an event, and in about a 4-hour time span, I did 230 headshots.
Wow.
Like something stupid,
Yeah.
right? So I think on average, maybe I had, 2 minutes with a person.
Yeah.
I haven't done the math, but I'm just making that number up. That's just what it felt like to me. So someone do the math and comment below what the actual average time was. Thanks. So very quickly, I had to disarm someone, make them feel comfortable, and get a couple of shots. I think I maybe took like between 2 to 5 per person, depending upon. 5 was someone that was kind of I had to work with a little bit more.
Yeah.
But most people I could get them within 2 to 3 clicks. I got a shot that was good. Right.
Yeah.
So it was very challenging, and I liked the challenge of, hey, how do I make you feel really comfortable with me? Like in
the
45 seconds.
Shortest period possible. Yeah.
Yeah. What can I say? What can I do? And I'm talking, this was, so it was at basically a job fair. That's what this was. And it was all of these every walk of life that you could think coming in to get a job. So now they need a headshot for those jobs. So cool, let's do a headshot. And it was challenging I can't use the same quote unquote script that I use
Right.
for one person that I do for the other, right? Just like with the lawyer, I'm going to use a very different script than I would with the comedian.
Yeah.
The stand-up comic, right? Stand-up comic, I'm probably going to be a little more laid back. I'm going to be more of me, right?
Right.
Versus if I'm talking to this lawyer, I'm going to be probably a little bit more professional.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm going to enunciate a little bit longer or a little bit more precise with my words and my selection and all of that stuff, right?
Yeah.
So you have to think about that stuff. Now, I'm diving in deeper to that for the photographers that are listening are probably going, oh, yeah, right. But for those that aren't photographers that are listening, if you guys are out there, it might provide a little bit of insight to say like, oh, I didn't realize that went into a headshot.
Yeah.
And again, I bring this up because as a professional, my job is to give you something that you can look at and go, yes, that's me. I love that.
Right.
Even though every single person that looks at a picture of themselves is immediately going to look at all the flaws that they've been looking at for however many years they've been alive, right? We do it. I'm sure that I know there's certain parts of me when I look at my picture, I'm like, I got to cover that. I got to block that.
Yeah.
I got to turn. Here's my angle. Here's my side.
That's why we spend time behind the camera instead of in front of it.
Yeah. But even to that point, that's a good point, is that I intentionally try to spend time on the other side so that I know what it feels like.
Yeah.
So I can empathize, right?
Yeah.
But then B, so that I can practice posing. And that's the other thing, is posing. So that I can try to practice posing, whether it be for a headshot or even just for when I'm doing model stuff. Like if I'm working with a model and someone who's never done this before, right? I was actually just doing a boudoir shoot, and I had to show pose. This is someone who doesn't really do boudoir, right? And a lot of people that do boudoir haven't done it before, right? So they're doing it for the first time. So now I have to get into a pose that looks, beautiful and sexy and elegant all at the same time. And now I have to show the person, hey, here's what I need you to do. So it's ridiculous. I almost wish I had a camera just capturing me doing that. But anyway, I mention that because I think it's important to kind of know what it's like on the other side.
I agree. And I said that like kind of tongue in cheek. I've spent more time in front of the camera since becoming a photographer than I ever did beforehand.
No, right.
So yeah, it's funny how it's kind of counterintuitive. You think, oh, I don't like having my picture taken. I'll be a photographer so I don't have to.
Right. Yeah. I like being the
opposite.
wallflower.
Yeah.
No, yeah. It's flip it around, dude. Go on the other side now. But it does kind of help you with that. And the posing is something that is huge. There is, little tricks that we can use to, whether it just finding someone's flattering angles.
Yeah.
I guess is really what I'm trying to get at, is we have to know how to kind of move people around to get people into that. And again, going back to that $25 headshot, that person might not be thinking about that. They might just say, hey, look at me and smile.
Yeah.
Well, that's not going to be a real smile, right? It's being able to, one of the things that I like to do as I'm sharing this with people, is that time that I have, if say I have a half an hour with someone, I want to spend at least the first 5 minutes, is 5 to 7, whatever, 10 minutes, if I can, just talking to them.
Yeah.
Hey, I'm Steve. What's your name? Cool. What do you do? What are you passionate about? What do you got, any hobbies? And they might look at me like, what the hell are we talking about? And it's just like, hey
job
man,
interview.
yeah. And you just bullshit with them. What was nice was in the studio here, I have a guitar because I play guitar, and a guy came in and he was like, oh, that's a nice guitar. I was like, oh, you play? He's like, yeah, I play. We spent like 7, 8, 9 minutes talking about guitar and music and bands and all of that stuff. And I learned that he played side gigs at bars and things like that. And this was a lawyer.
Yeah.
And so when we go in to shoot, I now in my mind am armed with information. I say armed because like those are my tools, right? To now say, hey, how can I get this guy to laugh? How can I get this guy to smile? Well, I'll say something to him like, and I don't know if I actually said this, but I'm making it up now. I'll say something like, hey man, give me the smile, like, you know, when you're playing a gig and only 5 people show up. And he immediately can connect to that and think of that.
Yeah.
And he smiles. Click, 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 click. Oh yeah, that's good. It's like, or when you start playing a solo, you hit a couple wrong notes, or the guy in the band messes it up. He starts laughing again. Click, 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 click. Now, odds are that out of those clicks that I grab, maybe one of them is good, because your natural ability or your natural instinct when you laugh is to throw your head back, you know, crinkle your neck, and it's a bad photo. Yeah. But somewhere in there, as they're leaning forward, boom, you can grab that.
Yeah.
And what I've done over time is try to refine the click, 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 click to just be click, click, got it.
Right. Instead of
as the term
spray
is, spray and pray. Yes, you know it. But what I found was that strategy of get to know someone so you have something.
Yeah. And also, not just for you, but also for them, now they're not thinking like, oh, geez, I got to have my picture taken. And they're more relaxed. They're thinking like, oh, you know, cool guitars, bands, you know, playing music. And, you know, it takes their mind off the, I don't know, I guess like anxiety provoking.
100%.
Yeah.
They're no longer thinking about having their picture taken.
Right.
They're thinking about them playing, or they're thinking about whatever it is that they do, or whatever topic you can bring up.
If you can find like common ground, then they're thinking about that instead of like, oh geez, I'm gonna be in front of the camera. Right.
What do I look like? Is my smile good?
Yeah.
Or when I'm posing with someone and they say like this, like this, like this, like this, like as if to reaffirm like, hey, I'm doing good. I'm doing good. That's another thing too. Remembering someone's name and repeating their name. The favorite sound, the favorite sound, this was some made up thing. I don't know if someone actually said it, but I repeat it as if I know what I'm talking about. But a person's favorite sound is their name. Isn't that right, Steve?
Absolutely, Steve. It's funny you bring that up because my father-in-law does that like all the time.
Really?
If it's just like me, my wife, and him, and we're just like talking about whatever, he'll say, so, you know, Steve, Danielle, blah, blah, blah. And then he'll like later, Danielle, Steve.
Yeah, just keep
to his own daughter and son.
Like, dude, we know you know our names.
It's funny, but yeah, I think it harkens back to that technique of making people feel comfortable.
Make someone, they're like, oh, he said my name.
Yeah.
You don't actually think that, but deep down, there is something comforting about saying someone's name.
Yeah.
And what's funny is that when I say your name, I'm saying my name. So it's
it's double.
Yeah. It's like, that's great, Steve. Because it's almost like there's the third person and first person kind of mixed in there.
Yeah.
But that's another thing, right? So thinking about those things, like I'll try to educate myself. Again, this is the psychology of that. I'm not even talking about f-stop, right?
Yeah.
Maybe my go-to f-stop is going to be f8 because that's like the sweet spot of most lenses, so it's going to be nice and sharp. But maybe if you're doing that environmental portrait, you might want to be at like a 2.8,
right?
3.2, f4, something like that. And your ISO, you probably want to keep that nice and low, right, to reduce grain. But if you're doing environmental, you might have to go up to 400, 800, something like that. And that kind of adds to the character of that. All that stuff almost doesn't even matter. Yeah. And if you're doing lighting, right, you probably want to go with like a Rembrandt, right? Maybe you want to do. You probably wouldn't want to go much more than Rembrandt, but then you'd probably do an open loop, right? If you want something to look a little bit more airy and happy.
I think it also, like lighting in itself depends on, you know, what the profession is. If it's a lawyer versus a comic.
The lawyer, you're probably going to go Rembrandt, maybe even go split lighting, right? If they're like, if you really want to kind of show their power, and because that adds drama. Split lighting adds drama. Rembrandt has drama. Open loop is a little bit more front lit. Or if you do like a Paramount, like head-on front lit, that might be the comedian. Maybe I'm probably doing Paramount with some rim lights on the edge to kind of give it this animated, cartoony look. So there's that, right? There's that.
A whole other factor of,
Yes, I love it. And that to me is, again, what makes this whole idea really interesting. And this topic, I think it's, we've been talking for 30 minutes already about a headshot, and we still we haven't even talked about something like another thing I want to bring up, dogs, right? If you have dogs at a shelter, that's a common thing, is that people will want photographers to come in and take a good shot of that dog.
Right.
Because if they just take a picture with their iPhone of the dog in the cage,
no one's going to want to adopt that dog.
Yeah. No, bring them outside in the grass. Shoot it so the background's nice and blurry, and they're panting so it looks like they're happy.
Yeah.
Boom. That's how someone's going to look at that and be like, oh my God, it's such a sweet dog.
Yeah. And whether you're trying to have dogs get adopted or sell a house or
all of that.
Anything, you need a good headshot to sell your business or, bring clients in.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so if I'm going back to those candidates, I would argue I would be okay with the idea of someone spending money on a good headshot, because if I look at my immediate thought, right, when I see those billboards, is that guy didn't care about his headshot.
Yeah. And
that's me personally.
Yeah.
I don't know that anyone else, like we were saying, not to bring that back up, but to kind of reiterate that point, because that's really what inspired me to record this podcast. Was I was driving by and I just see them all the time, and I'm like, oh, I want to talk about headshots. So I'd rather see someone spend some money on assuming a local photographer.
Yeah.
Why would they go somewhere else?
Right.
A local photographer, I mean, they could. That's another thing. We'll talk about that in a second.
Yeah.
We'll talk about Manhattan people or New York people. Anyway, I want to see them spend money on that headshot, because now I know that they're serious and they're presenting themselves in a way that's going to make them look their best.
Yeah, and it's a professional office that you're holding. You should have a professional headshot. Yeah.
That's what I think it comes down to, is being professional.
Yeah.
Like if you just snapped it with your iPhone clearly, and again, I say iPhone because not even iPhone. It could have been a regular camera, but it was just bad light.
Yeah.
It was dark. It was there was mixed color temperatures. So there's some tungsten and there's some daylight in there. So for those that don't know what I'm talking about, like if something looks blue and orange, that's what I'm talking about. If half of your face is blue and half your face is orange, don't do that.
Yeah.
No, let's balance the color. Nice skin tones. That's a whole other thing that we as photographers have to worry about, is making sure we get those nice skin tones.
Yes.
And what do we do if someone, I'm all over the place now. What about people that wear glasses like myself?
Oh, the reflections.
How do you deal with reflections?
Yeah.
Yes.
And also, the retouching, if they have blemishes, that's another thing that goes
How
into
far do you go with your retouching,
Yeah.
right? So maybe someone who's, 25, you don't really need to do much, or maybe you do, right? Maybe they still kind of have a little bit of acne, right? Or some red spots, versus someone who's 65. How are you approaching those in lighting and retouching?
Yeah.
Those are things that, as a professional, right? Not the $25 people, you would need to go in there and say, oh, cool, yeah, I got this, no problem.
Yeah.
I need to raise my light, I need to lower my light. And what was really cool, going back to me talking about that that job fair thing, was I had all of that. And it was good. It was there's a challenge to do that.
Yeah. Oh, for sure.
And it was really nice to be able to make adjustments and go, cool, yep, got it.
Yeah.
See ya, thanks. Cool,
Yeah.
yep, got it. Oh, let me bring this over here. And I even use that as some talking points too, was that after I just photograph someone really tall, someone short comes in, they start kind of, like, I'm a little short. I'm like, no, that guy's just too tall. And then they laugh, and then now, oh, Steve's a fun guy, right? It's that stuff.
Yeah.
Versus me saying nothing and being cold
Right.
and closed off and saying, I just need your picture, shut up and look at the camera. Nope, that's not going to work.
Yeah. I think in order to photograph people, it's more, well, I'm not going to say more important, but it's equally as important to be, a likable, personable, relatable person than it is to have all the technical perfection of
100.
another style of photography.
100%. So that makes me think of, so if I were to say to you, who is the I don't want to say master, but when you think of like the guy at the top of the headshot game, is there a person that you think of?
No, I don't really have like just one
Okay.
person who I think of like as the...
So the guy so basically I was kind of leading you in. I didn't know if you were familiar. Are you familiar with Peter Hurley?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, of course.
That's the guy that I think of when I think of the headshot guy. Right?
Yeah.
And it's only because...
no, I think, he just slipped out of my mind. But you're right. He is
not a bad thing. It's okay. What's up, Pete? How you doing, Pete?
I'm sure he's listening right now.
Yeah, it's your boy Swalter Swang over here. So Peter Hurley, right? He is a New York City headshot photographer. That is what he does.
Yeah.
He's a headshot guy, right? Former model turned photographer. And he is one of those guys that when I listened to him teach for the first time, I was like, this guy doesn't know anything about a camera. He doesn't know anything about lighting. He knew enough to get through it, but like when people would ask him more technical questions, he didn't know any of that shit. And I was like, this guy sucks. This guy's an idiot. How dare he be a photographer? But back to your point, you know what he is? He's personable. You can connect to him. He makes it fun, he makes it engaging, and he gets expressions. Yeah. Because that's ultimately, at the end of the day, that's all that matters. Yeah. If your lighting is, if it's the difference of let's call it the quality of lighting, if it's, 90% versus 60%, if that 60% has an amazing expression, it's going to win. Versus the bad expression with 90% doesn't matter. Yeah, exactly. Amazing lighting, but a boring face isn't going to help you. A great expression with like okay light, that's going to make the difference. Yeah. And for those that are thinking about those billboards that I'm driving by, yes, the person who is in bad light has a bad expression as well. So there is that. If he had a great expression, I might let it slide, but he doesn't.
Well, you probably would be happier if he knew he was in good light.
Yeah, well, yeah, see, exactly, right. He knew he had bad light. But so Peter Hurley is a guy, I think he charges like $1,500. Yeah. For a headshot session. And that's crazy.
Well, but he's the guy, though. Yeah.
He's the guy
in Manhattan.
You're it's a whole experience, right? You're going in there and you're working with the Peter Hurley. And what's funny is, I have a slight anecdote, is that I did headshots for a guy, an actor, who worked with Peter before. He found me and basically said, "Well, yeah, I worked with Peter, and I don't want to go back there because it was too much money, and I didn't really like the stuff that I got." And I was like, "That's interesting." And not that I wanted to make it about Peter in that session. After we photographed, I was like, "Hey, man, can I ask you a little bit more just about the experience?" Yeah. Blah, blah, blah. And he was like, "Yeah, it was." He kind of kept telling me. He also, sorry, there was a couple things. He's like, he felt like Peter was kind of yelling at him, in that he kept telling him to do the same thing over and over and over again. Yeah. Right. Do this. Pull your head up. Pull your chin out. Pull your head up. Pull your chin out. He felt like that was too much, which, arguably, hey, man, he's trying to do his job. Right. Maybe you should pull your head up and put your chin out. But then the other thing he said, too, was the lighting that he used. This is when he used, and I still think he does, but he was using constant lights, specifically the Kino flows. So for those, again, that aren't too familiar with lighting, and that Kino flows are like fluorescent bulbs, big tubes, like 4x2, big panels. He said they were in his face. And he does that. Peter does that specifically for reasons, but they were in this dude's face, and he was like, and it was just really overwhelming. Yeah, the constant light, if it's right in your face, it's just right there, and it's kind of hard, I think, to do all of the things that if someone's yelling at you and you have these bright lights, and he's like, it wasn't that great. He's like, I got some nice shots, but anyway. I share that because it was an interesting thing where I think of this dude, like, why wouldn't you go back to him, right? Like, I can't imagine if you worked with Peter, why wouldn't you work with him again? It was just an interesting point where I was just like, okay, well, maybe you don't have to do that, right? Maybe you don't have to go to a Peter Hurley to get a really good headshot or to get a $1,500 headshot. Right. Well, I think his perceived value may be, super high because he's now known as the guy, and he teaches other photographers, and he has workshops and tutorials and all this other stuff. You're right. So. It's probably he can increase that rate because of his quote unquote celebrity, right? Which is interesting when you think about a photographer being a celebrity, or at least in our photography world. There are photo celebrities. It's like I wouldn't really care about meeting. I mean, I would say I'd like to meet Brad Pitt. Sure, that'd be cool. But like, I wouldn't care. Like, I'd probably rather hang out with Platon than a Brad Pitt or an Annie Leibovitz. Yeah. Like, I'd like to hang out with her for a day. Yeah. Like, oh, Brad Pitt. Yeah, that's cool. Like, oh, you act? That's cool. Nice, dude.
Saw you in Fight Club.
Yeah, you were good in Cool World. Remember Cool World? I was like a little kid, and that was cool. You did like the cartoon thing. Yeah. But Annie Leibovitz would be amazing. Yeah. That would be amazing. Right?
Yeah. So well, I mean, if we were aspiring actors or something, then maybe Brad Pitt would be awesome to hang out with.
Probably makes a little more sense. Yeah. So anyway, headshots. Oh, I'm going to use that as a segue. I should have been smoother about that, Steve, but I wasn't. Actors that need headshots. What about that? Yeah. That's a whole other thing. Actors, performers, right? Typically, you need two looks. You need a commercial look and you need a dramatic look. Yeah. Or a theatrical look, whatever you want to call it. So that, again, is something very specific that when I'm asking someone, hey, what's this headshot for? Oh, I'm a performer. Oh, cool. What type of stuff do you do?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. You're going to need 2 looks. At least that's the tradition, is you would want 2 looks depending upon
what role you're
right.
you're
What
going
role you're going for.
yeah.
Your manager or casting directors are going to look for, what do they look like happy and what do they look like serious?
Yeah.
Right? How can we imagine them real serious in this role? So that's something else there too, right? Is being able to now rely on them as the performer to give you that. So that to me is what's
flipping the tables a little bit.
It is, and that was an interesting thing. And again, going back to Peter and the way that he approaches it is, he has certain things that he uses to kind of get them to quote unquote perform, but it's the flipping of things, right? It's like, hey, now you need to give me the look,
Right?
You need to show me how you can be serious.
Yeah, because that's what they do, and
Right.
taking the headshot is what we do.
Right. So it's like, let's meet in the middle
Yeah.
here. So one of the things that when I'm talking about with people, Peter calls it the squinch. Tyra Banks calls it smizing. I call it just squinting. And I combine that with what I call turtling and squinting. Have you heard me say turtle and squint?
I know exactly what you're talking about. I don't think
Yeah.
I've heard the term turtling before, though.
Turtle and
it's
squint.
when you bring your face closer to the camera.
Yeah, you bring your forehead and your whole face. We're both doing it, and no one can see that we're doing it. It's when you bring your face closer to the camera. And basically what it does is it accents your jawline. It brings your eyes a little bit closer to the lens.
Defines your cheek structure and all that stuff. Yeah.
Yes. If people are concerned of a double chin, things like that, it's the way to do that. And what I'm talking about is moving your face forward like 1.5 inches.
Yeah, it's
Maybe.
not much.
No, not at all. Like if you really stretch your neck out, you're doing it wrong. It should just be a little subtle thing that feels weird, but looks good on camera.
Yeah.
So that's something else that, if I tell people chin down, right, and I want chin down because it typically is going to make the eyes a little bit larger to the lens, right, brings your eyes in closer. And as a headshot, you would want to focus on what, Steve?
The eyes.
The eyes.
Always.
Always the eyes. Never the tip of a nose, never a mouth, it's the eyes. And it brings the eyes closer to the lens. And then when chin down, people are like, oh no, I'm going to get double chin. Well, you just move your head forward a little bit. So I call that turtling. And then you combine it with squinting, when you just squint your eyes. And the squinting, as I describe it to people, it's not like, ooh, the sun's too bright. It's even if you don't wear glasses, a lot of people, like if you're trying to look at something far away, you kind of give that little squint and you move the head around and you go, what is that over there? That's the squint. And fun fact, what you want to do is you want to lift your lower eyelids, and the muscle group that controls that lower eyelid is called the orbicularis oculi.
I didn't know that.
How's that for
Learned
your next
something new
cocktail
today.
party, right? And I learned that because I did headshots for a plastic surgeon.
Oh.
So I was like, oh my God, I'm so excited. Hey, what's this muscle group called? Or what is it? What's the muscle that controls? He's like, oh, the orbicularis oculi. I'm like, yes. And the whole day, dude, because I photographed the staff that was there and I did some interiors.
Yeah.
And the whole day I just kept telling myself, orbicularis oculi. I repeated it because I didn't want to forget it.
Yeah.
And then by the end of the day, I was like, hey, man, thanks so much for telling me about the orbicularis oculi. And he was like, you got it. So what I do is I show people that you lift your lower eyelid. It's lifting your lower eyelids. It's not squinting the top. It's trying to lift the lower. And when I show people that, they go, oh, I didn't know. I don't know how to do that. I'm like, of course you don't.
You should just tell them to activate their orbicularis oculi, and they should know.
And you want to know? So here's what's funny. I'll say that, and then they'll usually laugh, click, 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 click. That's when you pop in a couple of those.
Orbicularis oculi. I'm going to have to remember that.
Orbicularis oculi. And it just sounds important. It sounds good. Oh, yeah. The orbicularis oculi. So that's something else, right, is combining the turtle and squint kind of gives you that look. Again, for actors. If you're a real estate agent, no, I just need a smile at it.
Yeah.
Your eyes are naturally going to squint when you smile, so I need a real smile. So I would use something different than, raising the orbicularis oculi.
Yeah.
The orbicularis oculi. So, yeah, there's so many different thoughts and so many different approaches. The psychology, the technical, the artistic. I mean, you can only be so artistic with a headshot.
Yeah.
Right? Because you still need to show who that person is. And once you start to get too artsy, we'll call it, right?
Yeah.
I wouldn't really call it a headshot. I would then start to call it more of a portrait, right?
Of other...
right. It's more of like a fine art portrait or maybe more editorial kind of portraiture, but not a headshot.
Yeah.
So when I think headshot, again, I think it's
the head is the primary focus.
That's it. It's that person. It's you. It's your autobiography. I think that's the story. But yeah,
well, wouldn't it only be an autobiography if they took their own headshot?
You're right. That's a selfie. So it would just be a biography.
Yeah.
Right.
Selfies are autobiographical portrait. That's what I'm going to start calling selfies from now on.
Dude, yeah. Hey, you guys want to take a selfie? Oh, do you mean an autobiographical portrait? Cool. Yeah, I'll get down with that. Wait, what? Oh, you know the autobio. You gotta simplify it for the kids because you gotta call it. It's AB. You guys want to take an ABP? Get down with that autobio portrait. That's so good. Autobiographical portrait mode on the new iPhone XS Plus.
Hashtag autobiographical portrait.
Oh, I love that. Oh, we're photo nerds. That's so good. That's so good. Any other thoughts on a headshot, Steve?
I mean,
I think we covered.
We covered a lot,
ground.
but I mean, there's still, we could talk for hours about, retouching and lighting and all the other technical stuff. But I mean,
I think it should go without saying that if you're a headshot photographer, you just need to know that.
Yeah,
stuff.
you should know that stuff just as a photographer. I think, like what we've been talking about, the connecting with people is kind of what it really comes down to.
That really is the biggest thing.
Yeah.
And that's one that's difficult to practice on because for people like you can't let me split my thoughts because I'm very caffeinated right now. You can practice the lighting and the retouching with your friends. Right.
Or a mannequin or whatever.
Or a mannequin. Right. That you can practice. But you can't practice that psychology with your friends because you know them already.
Right.
So you need a stranger. You need someone that you don't know. You need to be able to connect with someone that you've never met before. And you need to make mistakes. You need to feel like, oh, I shouldn't have said that. Or you need to feel like, oh, that didn't work. Oh, what do I do now?
Right.
You need those emotions to then say, okay, how do I work around this?
Yeah. And you can't practice it without actually just doing it.
Right.
So.
And there are some strategies, like I've learned, so mirroring emotions or mirroring, body language, gestures, right? So if someone comes in super excited, you want to try to match that.
Right.
If someone comes in nervous and a little bit timid, like you need to kind of
bring it down
a little bit low key.
Yeah.
Hey man, how's it going? I'm Steve. Nice to meet you. Versus, hey, what's up? I'm Steve. I'm so excited to take your picture today. They're not going to respond well to that.
Yeah.
And that was something that worked well during that job fair is that some people come in and be like, all right, man, let's do this. It's like, yes, let's do this. I love it. You got good energy. All right, click, click, click. I'll see you later. Versus someone who was like, oh, what do I do? I don't like having my picture taken.
Yeah.
That's the number one, right? I don't like having my picture taken.
Yeah. Oh, all the time.
Nobody likes having their picture. Nobody. We are the only ones that are okay with it.
Yeah.
I'm just going to make this number up. Like 2% of people like having their picture taken.
Yeah.
Again, totally made up number. And that was something that was when I was listening to. So I was on Digital Surgeons podcast, and if you search for Creative Working Title is the name of their podcast. Mm-hmm. And I was on there, and we were talking about headshots. It was interesting to kind of think about these approaches, these topics that we were talking about, and being able to disarm people, being able to feel comfortable. I think about that even when, whether it's doing a podcast. I was talking about that with James, where I had someone on the podcast, and it's being able to match and mirror people. There's a good strategy with that. And just allowing people, I guess it's like this chameleon effect.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't really have a term for it. I'm kind of dancing around my thoughts there.
It makes people feel like they're in the same company, I guess. I don't know. It's like, they're like, oh, you're like me. I'll be more comfortable around you because you're like me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And there's something, I don't know. I think there's something to that. And it's not to say like be phony. To an extent, I mean, I guess you kind of are, right? But it's not for, it's not for a bad reason.
Right.
Like, hey, I'm a professional. I'm trying to do my job. I understand that I need to connect with you. That's what I have to do. So I'm going to do what it takes to connect with you.
Right. And so in the end, they get a better headshot.
Yeah.
So it's for their benefit. It's for your benefit. And
yeah.
I don't think, I wouldn't consider it being phony.
No, I guess it's not being phony. It's being aware.
Yeah.
Right. If if anything, yeah, it's the opposite. Like, hey, I have an ultimate awareness of what you're giving me, the energy that you're giving me. I need to match that.
Right.
And then hopefully get them to a place where you can kind of bring them up and make them feel really good. And then now energy's up high. Cool, man. You're giving a heavy handshake at the end going, thanks so much. Maybe some high fives. I don't know about high fives, but you want people to feel excited about just having their picture being taken. Again, when I'm making this number up, only 2% actually enjoy that.
Yeah.
So,
well, it's funny because like a lot of times, someone will come in saying like, oh, I hate having my picture taken. I don't like how I look in pictures, blah, blah, blah. By the end, I show them a couple of the nice ones. And they're like, oh, I like that. That's a great one.
Yeah.
And I think that in and of itself just gets them more excited about having their picture taken in general.
Yeah. I'll even take if someone's like, oh, that's not awful. Cool.
Yeah.
That's great. I'll take that's not awful.
Not awful is what I aspire for as a photographer. Not awful.
That's not awful. That's funny. All right. On that note, dude, thank you so much for coming in and hanging out.
Thank you. Yeah,
and
pleasure.
chatting. Where can people find your work and you on the interwebs?
They can find me at Stephen Wang Photography. That's with a PH. And Instagram at Stephen Wang Photography, also with a PH.
Dope.
Cool, man.
Cool. All right, guys. So more talking topics coming at you. If you guys want to help contribute and support the podcast, patreon.com/SteveWalterPhoto. And always a shout out to the people that contribute to that, because you really help kind of keep this thing going. And I recognize that, I have episodes here and there. I have a 2-year-old and an infant at home that has been difficult to make sure I can schedule these things. But I want to give a huge shout out to my man Swang for literally within like 20 minutes notice coming to the studio and recording a podcast.
Hey, right down the road, anytime.
Yeah. Thanks, dude.
Thank you, Steve.